Hi, this is Bill Hanifin, the Managing Editor of The Wise Marketer and CEO of The Wise Marketer Group, and I'm here with Jodi Daniels, who's founder and CEO of Red Clover Advisory.
Well, hello.
How are you?
I'm good.
Good morning.
Hello, hello.
Here we are today in this sunny day. Oh, it's raining a little bit,
It's
isn't
not
it?
sunny.
Yeah, it's raining in Los Angeles, but they desperately need the water, so that's a good thing.
I left sun and warm in Atlanta.
Oh, in Atlanta.
To come to rainy and cloudy in LA.
There you go. As I came from Fort Lauderdale, so we both just made this sacrifice for the loyalty business, didn't we?
That's how much we love it.
That's right. I know.
We're very loyal.
Exactly right. And we're here at Loyalty Summit CXM 2025, which is February in Los Angeles. And we just sat through a morning's worth of sessions, really interesting. But before we get into some of that, I'd like to know a little bit about you. It's the first time we met, first time we've had a chance to meet. And interesting, we think we've met everybody in this industry. Probably you have, I have, but here we are, new. But tell me a little bit about Red Clover Advisors.
Sure.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So we are a data privacy consulting company, and we are helping companies honestly build trust with customers, which is really akin to what everyone at this conference is trying to do, right? Build loyalty. We're doing it through the lens of privacy and often privacy laws. There's a long list of laws that companies now have to follow and a variety of different requirements. So we're simplifying data privacy to help them do that.
Okay, so what's your client base look like?
It is across the board. It is a small company all the way to a global Fortune 500 because it's really about the data that companies have, and it's not always so much around the size of the company, but really around the kind of personal information that they could have. Seriously, they could just have an email, and that email counts as personal information in all of these laws. They could be doing some type of tracking on a website. Just that counts as personal information under these laws.
Interesting. So, and the U.S. is a little bit behind, but we're quickly coming up to speed. I know there's a lot of legislation pending.
Well, we have, as of this recording, 19 states that have a comprehensive privacy law that is passed and signed. And we have over 13 that are effective today, with more coming into effect this year in 2025, more in 2026. And while we're sitting here in a legislative season, many more that are getting initiated and reviewed.
Interesting. So, and not to get ahead of ourselves, but I feel like we're the industry that could really take the leadership in a lot of these conversations, because if we're the ones who actually know this business and we know what the risks and rewards are in building brand and building trust with customers. If we don't do something, then the legislators rightfully will just go their own way, and they'll pass whatever laws they think are right without input from our industry. So.
Exactly. Well, self-regulation came around, back in 2009, 2010, when the little ad choices icon came along, trying to really work with online advertising. And that was to try and prevent government legislation. I always joke it kind of lasted about 10 years in the U.S., and it is quickly growing for a variety of different reasons. And I loved what you said, though, about the opportunity that this industry has, because this is really all about building a connection with individuals, and that's what privacy is. Privacy is about making that individual feel comfortable to provide the data that ultimately might best serve them. And we want to be able to protect that as well.
Interesting. So let me ask you, just so we know exactly, are you providing compliance type support for companies? So let's say I'm a retailer and I'm not even running a loyalty program, but I certainly have marketing campaigns and probably a lot of opt-in campaigns. I'm collecting a lot of data. How are you helping them? You help them have a policy and procedure in place, do some compliance? Do they get certified? Do you provide products or technology? Just cover some of that.
Great question. So we're going to be a professional services organization.
Okay.
It could start with a strategy. We're going to have a company, they have a great new plan. They want to launch a loyalty program, adjust something new and different. We're going to be able to help provide the privacy lens to that conversation.
Okay.
Can they collect that data? Should they use this data? And so from there, we'll be able to compare it to the privacy laws, and so those compliance elements as well. To comply with any of the laws, long list of requirements, definitely compliance services. So imagine kind of the strategic to compliance services.
Okay. So my touch point here was I had worked for Visa some years ago, and we'd worked with a lot of the banks, and at the time the PCI audits that was a new thing.
Right.
I don't know, 15 years ago, something like that. But is that still the standard? Is that a standard that any kind of organization that holds PII would have to adhere to?
PCI is still here,
Okay.
but really that is actually outside the scope of what we tend to work on. PCI is very specific to the use of credit card information. If we think about financial services, many people are familiar with, for example, the privacy notice that you may get in the mail, and it has a chart. It's really specific. That is from the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act. That's a financial services privacy law. We are modernizing privacy laws nowadays. So imagine you're going to ask me for my name and my email. You're going to track the different stays that I've had, maybe if I'm going somewhere, or all of my different transactions. Yeah. How you're going to analyze all of that data and whatever data you're collecting, the collection and use and sharing of that data. That is the data that is in scope for all these privacy laws. For example, GDPR is the big European privacy law. CCPA was the first U.S. privacy law. That's the California Consumer Privacy Act, right. And a long list of others that are coming. So those are going to be the more modern privacy laws that at Red Clover we're really going to be helping companies with.
Interesting. And my familiarity is that some of these laws, CCPA and others, are becoming increasingly restrictive. I mean, there's some very specific language in CCPA about loyalty programs, I think, that makes it could make it at some point almost difficult for a company to launch a loyalty program.
I would say there are specifics in these laws. I would offer that, especially in the U.S., you can still launch them. It's really about being thoughtful to what's actually being collected, and does it need to be collected. So the theme in most of these privacy laws, let's stick with the U.S. with a few exceptions. There's always an exception to the rule.
Right.
Is it's very much around minimizing data collected, and then notice, really being specific in what's happening. And CCPA does require some really specific items that have to be in that privacy notice, which is why that conversation with whomever is responsible for privacy and whatever program's actually happening happens. And then choice. I can unwind my choices. So if I decide I don't want to be a part of that loyalty program and I want to ask for my data to be deleted, a Californian has that right, and someone in many other states do as well.
Okay. How, as a consumer, so I have to ask you a couple of, this is something I love about our business, is that we speak through this professional lens, but we're all consumers, and we participate in these programs. So I sometimes wonder when I ask to be unsubscribed from even a newsletter, or I want my data deleted, if that becomes to that, I have that option. How do I know that it actually happens?
Well, that's
as a consumer.
Really great question, and that is all about trust, because the reality is, as a consumer, you are trusting that the company you asked to do something actually did it.
Right.
Right. As a customer, I can't go in your systems and get proof and go in to do that. I'm trusting, just like I am trusting that that company was going to deliver me an amazing product and service. I'm trusting that it's also going to actually be deleted, or I'm not going to get those emails anymore.
So the trust is warranted until I get the next email, or I find out that I'm still on some sort of a list and I get a solicitation, and then I say, wait a minute, what happened?
Exactly.
And then how does a consumer complain? What's the process like these days, and what's the proclivity of the average consumer to follow through on that complaint?
Well, consumers now have a number of options. Obviously, social media is one, and here it happens. The other, though, is the regulators in the states that have privacy laws. So in California, there's actually an agency. So for people listening, most people are familiar with kind of the insurance commissioner. Sort of imagine one of those, but now for data privacy. That exists in Europe already. They have data protection offices. That is what exists in California. Many of the other states have the attorney general that you would go and complain to, and then some states are forming them. So for example, in Texas has a website that consumers can go to and submit a complaint. And within the first 75 days of the Texas privacy law going into effect in 2024, they received over 500 complaints. Consumers are finding their way when they're really unhappy to do so. And then, of course, we have the Federal Trade Commission. There's a number of federal agencies, but at the state level, consumers are figuring it out.
Interesting. And what are the financial penalties like these days? Are they on the rise? Is it because typically business will respond to some kind of a punitive action? So if there is a financial penalty of enough substance, they might manage themselves differently.
Well, like all good things in compliance, it depends.
Okay.
But what's I think important is to understand it's per record, which means if you were to have, one individual, that might be $1,500, $7,500, kind of depends on the situation and the state. If it was, though, a significant group of them, right, 1,500 times the number of people in a program can add up quickly. And while financial penalties are definitely there, some of these things are visible from the outside, which means anyone can read your privacy notice and see if it's appropriately written or not. Anyone can test the privacy rights process and figure out, is it working properly or not? So people can see that from the outside. And for me, I think what's so important is the whole conversation around loyalty is, again, around trust. So people who are unhappy are now no longer going to be a loyal customer. And while financial penalties might be high, what's the value of that customer to your brand? And if you use data in a way that makes them unhappy, you may now have just lost that customer. They might tell their friends, and it can have a ripple effect.
Right. That's where the value really is, because I saw something very interesting the other day that there's a number of lawsuits, I guess, Apple and others were involved in them for violating some aspect of consumer privacy. And they said, I think this had to do with data breaches. So this was the end result of the data breach resolution process. And class action lawsuits become a thing. It becomes probably like a greenfield for the legal community to go and have that kind of litigation ongoing. They said the average amount of payout for the consumer in these kind of lawsuits, the bigger ones, was $20.
Oh, exactly. I'm sure we've all received the little email that says you earn $2 or $20 or what PayPal account would you like your $5 to go to?
Yeah.
So it's definitely really small. The PR reputation, that loss of customer,
right.
For me, that's the piece why companies want to really get this right. And the other way companies are getting this wrong is they're saying one thing in the privacy notice and they're doing something else. So to your question of, how do we help companies? Well, we're trying to get marketers to understand you have to think about the privacy aspects early.
Okay.
To make sure that you're able to do all the great things that you want to. And then it ties to the requirements, which is make sure you have what you need in a privacy notice. Make sure you honor someone's choices. Maybe give them more choices if you need to. Some of the very basic pieces can be solved with just the upfront planning.
Okay. And I'm curious about how, I've got so many questions. I'm trying to keep them all in my head for you, but to what extent are there best practices that are being adopted in the industry, even about something that's, I guess this is in the domain, the unsubscribe from an email newsletter list or an email? I happen to have noticed, and I started to document the different types of responses. You'll see an unsubscribe in some emails in Google, if you use Gmail, it's right next to the sender email address. It's very clear. It's blue, and you can click on it. And sometimes you get an instant message that says you're unsubscribed. I've used that, or else I've used one down in the footer of an email that'll take me to a form that's very unclear about, well, you can participate in all these. It's almost like I'm starting from scratch. You can participate in all these different newsletters that we send out, and then somehow at the bottom it says unsubscribe. But my point is that I've seen probably 4 or 5 different responses to my request to unsubscribe. Some of them make it very easy to do. Some are complicated, and I feel like they're actually not trying to be helpful. So in your professional services work, are you advocating for like a solution that's like a best practice standard?
Right. Well, so let me address that Google one, because Google and Yahoo actually made a requirement that they wanted that one-click unsubscribe next to the sender name to help reduce spam.
Okay.
So that is also a requirement to anyone. Most email service providers are able to help you do that. There are some settings and finagling you need to do. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, go do a little bit of research, go to Google.
Right. And we're going to call you.
Or you can call us as well.
Clover Advisors, yes.
Yes. So the other piece, though, that you were talking about in terms of best practices, I really like to call it the unsubscribe, and save the unsubscribe, rather. If someone goes to unsubscribe, they're mad. They don't like either the volume of content, they don't think it's relevant to you, or they're really mad at your company. If I'm really mad at your company, you need to make it easy to find that unsubscribe from all button. It should be there. I should be able to easily do that. At the same time, a lot of companies haven't given people choices. And you might be a brand that is sending let's say you're a clothing brand and you might have women's clothes, men's clothes, kids' clothes, and you're giving me everything. I don't want all of that. I really actually want to be able to just get what I want.
Right.
And you could extrapolate that across any industry. The opportunity to be able to make those selections means that you are able to save the unsubscribe because I'm going to now opt into what I actually want to hear from you.
Okay.
And I do like those choices. So where we're seeing companies move is have these universal consent preference centers to be able to have someone opt in or out of what's relevant for them. It should always, though, be very easy and clear to unsubscribe from all. That should not be hidden.
Okay.
And you also, best practice, do not want all the other items checked as if I was opted in.
Pre-checked.
So no pre-checks.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was the word I was thinking of.
Yeah.
We do not want any pre-checks anywhere. That is a no-no. That is not considered consent. Anyone listening, if you have a pre-check box and you might have to comply with the concept of consent, it is not considered freely given with a pre-check. So if you listen to anything I have to say, no pre-check boxes. But from there, then you have a lot of flexibility to be able to keep that person.
So what do you think about this one? Similar, I've had my email address pre-populated, and I've had to enter my email address. And honestly, like I happen to have 3 different email boxes that I check, and so I usually know which one I'm in, but it does make me pause now and again when I see it blank and it says input your email, and I'm thinking, gosh, am I in this one or that one? Because I want to make sure I do the right thing.
I'm in the camp of if I am clicking from an email, I should have it pre-populated.
Okay. And that was my thought all the way through is if I'm unsubscribing for any number of reasons, it's usually, it has an element of negativity. You're either inundating me or I'm not happy with your brand. So anything that you do in the process that makes me feel like you're making it hard for me or you're entering some element of doubt or something, that would just sort of endorse my feelings of negativity, wouldn't it?
Exactly. And privacy is all about trying to make things clearer and easier. Be
Right.
transparent when I'm opting in. Here's what you're collecting, and here's how you're going to use it, and here's why. Then people understand. No one likes to be surprised in the world of data and privacy.
Right.
They want cool little surprise and delights, but not where they do what I call the scratch your head test.
Yeah.
No one wants to understand, well, how did that happen? Clear and transparent will honestly win happy, loyal people.
So I just one more, and then I'll get off the email subject. But there's a person I follow he's really well known. His name's Christopher Penn. I don't know if you've seen him, but he writes now a lot about AI. But he's been there from the very beginning. Some social media. He's been through the whole evolution. But his newsletters I think do very well. He's got some great content. But he has the most obvious, almost comical opportunity for you to opt out. You know, he has a picture of a dog, and he has happy dog, unhappy dog, but he really puts it in your face. And I think sometimes as somebody who sends a lot of email from Wise Marketer, we think, oh, we don't want to invite too many people to unsubscribe. It might hurt our list. But on the other hand, I think he's so forthright with it, and it's almost like there's no way you're going to laugh, and you're going, of course, I love your newsletter. I mean, I'm sure for some, he gets the unsubscribes, but you see what I'm saying is like maybe he's expressing like, I'm not afraid. I'm giving you good content. If you really don't want it, go ahead and unsubscribe.
Right.
But have you seen more people being that way?
I've seen a few.
Do they have courage for that?
I've seen a few. I think your word of courage is a really good one.
Okay.
Because it takes so much effort to get the person on that list. But the reality is, if I'm on your list and I don't open and I don't engage, I'm really not a very good person. You really don't want me on your list.
Yeah.
I'm hurting everything. I might even be costing you money.
Yeah.
So to get off the list, it's an okay thing.
Yeah. So let's talk about channels really quickly. How about in the SMS channel? Because
SMS channel is opt-in. Opt-in for marketing messages. There are oodles of class action lawsuits. The big privacy law there is the TCPA here in the U.S.
Right.
Globally, there's a myriad of other laws, but it is an opt-in channel.
And TCPA penalties are enormously.
They are, and again, because it's a by record thing.
Right.
So it's typically if you were the person harmed there, you're not by yourself. You weren't the only sole little phone number over there. It's a collection of them, and that is where it gets incredibly expensive.
Let me ask you this. What kind of C-level support do you think is there for privacy regulation, and how do marketers, marketers sometimes are so focused on let's run the campaign and get results. Other areas of the company might be more compliance concerned, but Do you talk to a lot of C-level people to get their support for these
I do.
initiatives?
And it is, for companies that really appreciate consumers and trust and wanting to do the right thing by their customers, those individuals tend to understand that privacy law is just another law. And it is here because unfortunately companies abused the privilege of connecting with individuals and how they were using their data.
Right.
So those that understand it and just build it in early. And it isn't always the office of no. It can be the office of, well, here's how we have to do it. But the reality is, if you go around the requirements, you're going to make individuals unhappy. You might have fines.
Right.
And that defeats the entire point of what we're trying to do, which is build relationships with consumers.
Gotcha.
And the more data that you get that is accurate from them, then people are going to feel comfortable. The last part I'll just suggest is everyone listening, I am sure, has answered the I don't want to answer that button, right? The I don't
Yes.
prefer to answer.
Yes.
The reason is because companies don't trust how that data is going to be used. You don't want to be that company. You want to be that company where the person feels so comfortable and feels like it's going to be valuable. That's the essence of a loyalty program, and that is the essence of privacy right there. That's where they intersect.
That's great. If you were to leave marketers, especially in this group, all loyalty marketers with one idea to take away about their privacy policy and their plans, what would you say?
I would say that privacy matters and that privacy is really all about trust. It is about getting someone to trust how your company collects, uses, and stores data. Put privacy at the beginning, just like you're going to with, do I have the right content? Do I have the right imagery? Do I have the right tools in place? Privacy needs to be part of that conversation up front, and it will yield amazing returns for you.
That's great. Good way to land it. So Jodi Daniels, Red Clover Advisors, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time.
I really appreciate it.
All right. I learned a lot.
Thank you.